Hello, I'm Gina Woodham. Welcome to It's a Lifestyle, where we interview people with interesting careers and hobbies, which for my guests, it's more than a career, it becomes a lifestyle. And I'm hoping my guests inspire some of you to gather your hidden talents and aspirations to build your own unique career. Today's guest is a chef. She's a cooking instructor. She has her own cooking show. Please welcome Angela McKellar.
Thank you so much for having me, Gina.
So let's talk about your childhood that was full of, even as early as 3, you were cooking.
As long as I can remember, my great-grandmother would come over every Thursday afternoon. It was the highlight of my week. And she would come in and have all this stuff all over the table everywhere. And she'd sprinkle flour on the table. And I was convinced that it was fairy dust because it all was so magical coming together. And I always felt so accomplished when she would come in and have me help her. And, you know, I'd be cutting out biscuits and, you know, all these fun things. And then when we would have it arrive at the table and hot and it's melting in my mouth and I'm thinking, I'm 3 years old and I made this. It was fantastic.
And then you went on, I mean, even just a few years later, you were already cooking for bake sales. And talk about your experiences with that.
It was really kind of just a way of life for us. Cooking was a way to kind of escape the stress of the outside world and a way to unleash your creativity. And my great-grandmother always made it very clear that, you know, it's very important that you cook to have a good time and be creative, but also to give of yourself to others. And so I was always cooking for bake sales or for our class parties. They'd say, oh, who wants to bring plates and napkins? And I'd say, I'm bringing the chocolate chip cupcakes. So it was always so much fun. And it was about, you know, like I said, giving of yourself to others and just having a really good time with it. I would see the flour and the butter or the Crisco, and I'd see all this stuff scattered all over the table, and none of it made any sense to me. And she starts putting all the flour out, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, that must be fairy dust. And I'm watching Wonder Woman all the time, and I'm thinking, oh, this is all magic. And, you know, at the end of the meal, when it all comes together and you look at it, it's just, I would just say, you know, this is for me. This is what I should be doing.
That young.
So that young, yeah. I mean, it was just, every single Thursday she was teaching me a new technique, and it was just what we did. We lived out in the country, and you know, we were a middle-class family where money was kind of, we had to have our economical activities and we had to eat, so we would make that our activity to do. And so the whole family would get together and we'd all pitch in and help, and it didn't matter if you were 2 or 4 or everybody pitched in, and it was a group effort, and it was a great way for the family to bond.
Who were some of your mentors growing up?
I would say Mom Buck, my great-grandmother, who I still talk to today and get cooking advice from. She'll be 93 this year. And she's a phenomenal, phenomenal lady. She survived the Great Depression. And she would always tell me, just use what's in your pantry. Don't worry about recipes. Throw it together, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And, you know, cook on a budget. And she would always show me exactly how she did everything. And one thing that I just really loved about her is that there were no mistakes. It was all about learning. And if you had to toss it in the garbage and start over, you know, at least you had fun getting your hands dirty. And so she was definitely one of my biggest mentors. And as far as outside of that, all of my friends would watch Saturday morning cartoons, and I'm watching Julia Child and Justin Wilson and the Frugal Gourmet. All of my friends think I'm crazy because I don't care anything about Sesame Street and the Cookie Monster. I'm 4 or 5 years old watching, you know, Julia Child. So I just thought it was so great to watch Julia Child, who doesn't care anything about mistakes. It's all about learning. And Justin Wilson, he's all about having fun. Great food, but having fun. And the Frugal Gourmet, of course, because I was being trained by a woman that had survived the Great Depression. Everything was about saving money, and so that was an integral part of my life, so I could really relate to that show. And so it was wonderful. I had all these wonderful people around me in these shows, and it just really built my knowledge from a very young age.
What other activities would you say you had? It sounds like cooking surrounded your life. What other activities, though?
Well, outside of cooking, anything that I could do that was associated with performing and music was a blast. I always liked to clown around, so I took tap and jazz for 6 or 7 years, probably from age 3 until 7, 8, 9, somewhere around in there. And then after that, I played piano for several years. and I was able to play in church some and perform for my friends, get to show off a little bit. And then as I got older, it was things like drama. I was able to have the lead role in a couple of plays during high school and got to clown around that way, and that was a lot of fun. So anything that I could do to just kind of clown around and have a good time and socialize. I think, a lot of my studies were studying how to be a social butterfly. So
Same here. As you moved towards college, what was your focus?
Well, I waited to go to college until I was 22 years old. I worked in restaurants for several years, and I enjoyed learning all aspects of food and how to prepare it, how to serve it, and that was a lot of fun for me. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back to college right away. And I knew that I wanted to do something with food, but I wasn't exactly sure what. And then I figured out that I really liked to talk. So I got a degree in Spanish, and I focused on academics at that point, and I got my 4-year degree in 3 years. And then after I graduated, I thought, well, I'll go into corporate America, but I still like food. So it's always been somewhat of a quandary.
We want to hear more, and we will next on It's a Lifestyle. Please stay tuned. Tell us about your very first job out of college.
I worked in insurance claims, auto insurance claims, and I think anybody that knows me was quite baffled by that choice. I learned a lot of valuable information, but I have to say it wasn't really for me. But it took me a long time to figure that out. Cooking is for me.
And how did you, having this 9 to 5, how did you keep up with your cooking in the meantime?
Well, cooking has always been a way for me to kind of escape the stress of the outside world. And I would come home, and I think a lot of people consider cooking to be a chore, whereas for me, it's a way to unwind and be creative. And I mean, every time I cook dinner, it's like a craft project, and it's so much fun. And so keeping up with cooking, it was just kind of second nature.
You eventually decided that cooking would be a career for you. What series of incidents led to that idea?
Well, I'd always known that I wanted to do something with cooking. I just couldn't figure out what. And my husband and I were going to take a trip to Asheville, North Carolina. And I was researching online how, where, all of this. And I found a bed and breakfast that was hosting a recipe contest. And so I entered it. And then after I entered it, it said that it had to be a very easy recipe. Well, the recipe that I entered was spinach and artichoke eggs Benedict with spicy hollandaise sauce. And I think I'm probably the only person on the planet that thinks that's easy to make. And so I said, oh, well, forget it. I'm not going to win that. And so after I entered the contest, I was talking to my husband about it, and I had been interviewed in auditions for Hell's Kitchen, the first season, back in 2004. And I made it to the final round of interviews after several interviews, and I thought I'd never make it out to LA, but I did. They flew me out there. And I was very thankful for that opportunity, but I figured it wasn't quite the right way to showcase my talent. But one thing that it did teach me was that I was very comfortable on camera, and a cooking show on television, Fox had seen something in me, and I thought, I really need to do something with that. So that combined with thinking about the recipe contest and that sort of thing. And then I read in a magazine where there was this whole YouTube phenomenon I had never heard of. And I started searching for cooking shows on YouTube, and I thought, I can do that. I know I can do that. And so Michael and I were talking about that, and he said, well, kick back and cook, that sounds like a plan. And I said, yeah, and I just kind of brushed it off. And then a month later, I found out I won first place in that bed and breakfast contest. And I said, that's it. I'm going to put a show on YouTube and just see where it takes me. And so that was pretty much it. I started getting a lot of positive feedback. People were interested in having me teach local cooking classes. They were asking when my cookbook would be available. And so it just kind of snowballed from there.
Wow. So in saying that, let's talk about your series of steps toward your first show.
Well, I woke up one morning, and I was really excited about the recipe contest, but I woke up the next morning after I'd had time to think about it, and I said, if I'm going to do this, it takes commitment. And I told myself, I'm committed to whatever it takes. This is what I'm going to do. I am going to be the next celebrity chef. So I'm just going to upload a show, and I hadn't been feeling well the week before, but I said, I'm on a roll, I'm excited, I'm committed, I'm getting a show up. So I uploaded a show to YouTube, and
Well, let's talk about the steps of how you even put that together.
oh my.
I mean, not many people just wake up one day and say, I'm going to do a cooking show.
I had this little cheap digital camera that had about 2 minutes of video every time you click the button. I had no tripods, nothing. So I invited a friend of mine over, and I said, okay, I want you to dress up in this funky wig and put on these crazy aprons and just have fun cooking, and we'll have another friend of mine come over and she'll film it, and let's just see where it goes. Well, we're cooking and we're hanging out and we're having a good time, and every 10 minutes we're having to go download the clips onto the computer because it's just this little cheap camera and it won't film for 30 minutes at a time. And so we went all night like that. It was maybe 5 hours to film this cooking show. And at the end of the night, we had a really dynamite meal and, tons of footage that we didn't know how it was going to turn out because, it was 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. And then I was introduced to the software editing program, and I spent 2 whole days editing down this, 2 or 3 hours of, cooking that we'd done. And it was so terrible. We had disappearing people, disappearing plates, because I didn't know how to edit. But when I uploaded it to YouTube and the video sites, everybody raved over it and they loved it.
I loved it.
And yeah, and I was blown away because we were just having a good time and I didn't know where it was going to go. But I mean, people were like, okay, I can't wait for the next one. And so that's when I started thinking, well, I think that maybe I should get a tripod and then try that out. And a couple of weeks later, I put up another one. And then my manager from California, she sent out a mass email to everyone we knew, and everybody was forwarding that out, and everybody was forwarding that out, and she found out about it. And so she emailed me and she said, I love your show, it looks great, but you need to figure out how to do your hair, how to do your makeup, how to find a better camera, and how to do better lighting. And I said, yeah, that's probably a good idea. I don't think any of the cooks on Food Network go on there without any makeup or hair. And so I took her advice. And next thing you knew, she said, yeah, I think we've got something to run with here. And she kept on giving me pointers for how we could tweak it and make it better. And, I mean, it's just been amazing since then. I mean, I've got my cookbook. It's going to be finished.
We do want to hear more, and we will next on It's Lifestyle. Please stay tuned. McKellar, what do you think make your techniques so unique as a chef?
Well, when I was trying to come up with a show idea, I was talking to a lot of my friends about what they would like to see. And what seemed to be the most popular suggestion that they had was they wanted something that was on a budget, that could be done in a reasonable amount of time, but they wanted to be able to watch something that would make cooking fun. And so the focus of my show is shortcuts and gadgets, things you just want to pick up and have fun with in the kitchen. And, the recipes are really, really tasty. They're really, really easy to prepare because of the gadgets and the shortcuts that make it so simple. And they don't take you all day in the kitchen. And so it's very entertaining, but it's also very valuable information, and anybody at home can recreate the recipes. And that's what I'm most proud of.
What do you find are the biggest hang-ups for people that don't cook?
Most people tell me that they don't have enough time, that they're too busy and they just want something really quick they can whip up in no time. And that's one thing that I really like about a lot of the things that I make is that they are very quick. When I'm teaching people how to prepare meals, I teach them that there's a lot more to cooking than just getting a meal to the table. It's a joint effort. It's a way to connect with those that you love. It's about being generous and giving of yourself. And if you make it a project that everyone can participate in, it goes by much more quickly because you have much more hands available to help with the tasks. And also, it becomes an activity versus something you have to make time to do. It becomes something fun that everyone can do together. So, and then other hang-ups, people say it's too expensive to cook at home. A lot of the cookbooks that some friends of mine have used, they say, well, it'd be great. It says I can prepare these meals quickly, but they all cost me $100 to feed 4 people. And so another focus of my show is budget. And generally, it only costs $5 to $7 per person to prepare every meal that I make. And when they get up into $7 and $8 a piece, that includes a drink, an entree, and dessert. And where can you go to a restaurant and get that kind of value? So
I find it difficult to look at a recipe and realize they're asking for an ingredient I will probably only use once. Do you get that comment?
Yes, a lot of people say that. They want to try a recipe, but they'll never reuse beef base, for example. What is beef base? And so what I do is I show people how to use things like that and how they could reuse it in another recipe down the road. And then,
or do without it, maybe?
Or do without it even, yes. So I had a shepherd's pie recipe and then also a ropa vieja dish. And both of those require beef base, but then I also told how you could substitute beef broth, a can of beef broth, in place of the beef base. But another thing that I explain to people is if you find the beef base, it'll actually save you money in the long run if you have several recipes that you prepare with it versus buying separate cans of beef broth. And it gives you a richer flavor. So,
what have been some of your more unique experiences teaching people how to cook?
I think that something that is just, I think I consider it to be unique, even though I'm starting to encounter it more often. People always come in thinking that cooking is difficult and that they either can't do it or that they'll never have time to do it. And by the end of the class, they're always saying, you know, that was so easy. Why am I not doing this more often? I'm not going out to eat anymore. If I'd known it was this easy, I would have stopped going out to eat a long time ago. And I think that's so rewarding, and it's such a unique thing to hear, I think, because you always imagine people have it made up in their minds, oh, well, you know, cooking's just too difficult, I don't have time. But by the end of the class, they're all saying, oh, no, you know, this is easy. It's not that time consuming. And I think that's a really neat thing.
You do use a lot of unique utensils.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, is it from your base of experience? Are there certain places you seem to find, or tell me some of your experiences with finding a utensil that no one would ever think of using it to cook with.
Yeah. This is so funny. I found a vegetable corer, and that sounds like such a mundane thing. But you can use this thing for so many things, just besides seeding things or what have you. And I go through these kitchen stores and I find all these unique gadgets, and I saw this vegetable corer and I thought, how on earth is it that I've never seen this thing before? I've been using a spoon, or I've been using all these other things that are more difficult, and it just simplifies the process so much. And it's that kind of thing where I go through and I look for gadgets that I've not seen before, and then I use them in practical application and show others how that it can be done. And then they think, oh my goodness, I want to make that so I can use that gadget. And it's really neat. People are always emailing me and saying, where did you get that? I got to have that apple peeler corer slicer. So,
as you're producing your show, how do you decide what recipes to use?
You know, generally what I do is I create a recipe, and then I invite my friends, my guinea pigs, over. And if I have their approval, then I'll generally profile that on a cooking show. And the ones that I get really, really rave reviews over, then those are the ones that, for example, massaman shrimp, it's a Thai dish. And I invited a friend of mine over, and he said it was amazing, and so I put it on my show. And then I had 20 or 30 people email me and say they tried it and loved it. And it was really, really amazing. So that's how I come up with that. I just listen to the people who are close to me.
Out of all the various dishes you cook, what do you consider your specialty?
Probably my Eggs Benedict. I have so many different variations of Eggs Benedict. My favorite is the one that won me the recipe contest, but it's the spinach and artichoke Eggs Benedict with spicy hollandaise. And it sounds complicated, but it's actually very simple to prepare, and it's dynamite. People, they try it, and they say it's better than anything they've ever gotten in a restaurant, which does my heart good.
Have you ever, in your past, did you ever come across a guy that was competitive with you in the kitchen?
You know, they were never competitive with me, but they would frequently break up with me because they thought that I just wanted to be a homebody and cook all the time. And so my husband now, he said, well, that was so foolish of them because I love that you cook all the time.
You were also coming out with a cookbook.
Uh-huh.
Tell us about how you put that together.
Well, I was thinking about all the suggestions that my friends had made and what they felt were missing in a lot of cookbooks. And like you were saying about how you buy all these ingredients that you think you'll never use again, I put together 31 meals for a month, and I take and index the entire thing. And so if you have yogurt in this recipe, then I say turn to such and such page and you can see this recipe that also uses yogurt, and then you get uses out of all of your ingredients. And I think that that's very helpful when it comes to waste, because a lot of times, you're flipping through the cookbooks and you see a wonderful dish, but you flip through 500 recipes and none of them use that same thing. Mint jelly? I don't see that anywhere else again. But then you'll see in my recipes, if I have mint jelly in one, I'm going to have mint jelly in another recipe. So it's focused on gadgets, making the whole process simple, and making sure nothing goes to waste.
You are also coming up with inventing gadgets for the kitchen.
That's right.
Talk about that.
I think that one of my biggest things is when you go out and you buy gadgets and you're buying 10 or 15 different gadgets, it gets expensive after a while. And I wanted to design something where you could buy dual purpose gadgets and have it where if you have a need for a vegetable peeler, then you're also going to have an end that will julienne your carrots. And, both uses are for vegetables, and both uses, things like if you're going to have a zester, you need to have something on the other side that can also juice it. And something that will catch the seeds. When you're juicing something and the seeds get everywhere. And so just from a practical standpoint, I think about all the things that my kitchen needs and I can't find anywhere. So, and it's been such a great creative process. It's so much fun to come up with those kinds of things. And so I've come up with probably 20 or 30 so far, and I've got a ways to go, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
You work with a lot of charities.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of your favorites?
Some of my favorites in the past have been, I've worked with Tour de Cure, and which was about cancer awareness. And I've worked with the Boys and Girls Club of America. I've also worked with AIDS Atlanta. But I've worked with several different charities over the years, but I have to say that two of my favorites are Families of SMA and also the Shepherd Center Foundation. And that's really close to my heart because my husband is a quadriplegic, and we've received some really great services from both the charity and the Shepherd Spinal Center of Atlanta. And so it was an honor to be able to help those charities by donating my services.
Angela, if you could give someone advice on following their heart with their career, what would you say?
I would say, don't try to love what you do for a living. Try to figure out how to make a living doing what you love. And make a commitment and say, I'm going to do exactly what I love to do and figure out how to make money doing it. And once you make that commitment, the possibilities will be there. Life is like a kitchen. The possibilities are endless.
Angela McKellar, it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Gina. I've loved being here.
And thank you for joining us here with It's a Lifestyle. Have faith in yourselves. We'll see you next time. Thanks.